Kathy Brennan, who was last year's presenter at the Women's Health Forum, and we asked her to MC tonight's event because we feel like there's so many similarities in her story and the stories that you'll hear this evening. So please welcome Kathy Brennan.
Oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming to the Women's Health Forum. This is so awesome. This kind of event creates a healthy community. We're women. We can change the world, and we're resilient. As Cecily said, I was the speaker last year, and I talked about how after a long battle with depression, I won. Thank you. That is something to celebrate. Through that journey, I thought of myself as stubborn and maybe gritty, but I never thought of myself as resilient. But I am, and so are you. Resilient is a good word. It's powerful and strong. And how we talk about our experiences changes the way we think about them. I'm sure you're going to be inspired by our speaker's words tonight. Let me tell you about Christy and Marie. They became fast friends when they were teaching at the YMCA in the Live Strong program. Live Strong is for cancer survivors, and they focus on health and incorporate exercise into their healing. And you're going to learn through their stories about their uncanny similarities, their heartache, but most importantly, about resilience and hope. Please welcome Christy Shook and Marie Christensen.
Am I on? Okay. That's okay, you just need to hear me.
I hear myself. Okay. Well, we would like to start by thanking each and every one of you for coming tonight and for allowing us to give you the gift of our time, to give you the gift of a story that we hope that you take with you. And we're going to start with Marie talking first.
That is so not fair. No, but we really do. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Christy and I have had the pleasure of working together now for 21 months. It's been an amazing journey, but we're just going to have to rewind back about almost 18 and a half years ago now, almost 19. And so I actually am from this area. I grew up in St. James and just had a wonderful family, wonderful mother and father, sisters, brother, and a storybook life, if you will. It was just, things were kind of humming along as they're supposed to. I went to college at Augsburg in the Twin Cities and majored in marketing and economics, and I was going to conquer the advertising world. And so I had done that. My background was, I focused a little bit more on design and advertising, then got into art directing, had my own marketing communications firm, and then I met this wonderful man, and his name was Bob Farley. And for a different time, I can tell you about how we met, because probably want to save that for a different time, but really there was no reason why we should have ever dated, and I'm sure many of you have stories like that when you first met your spouse too. But I am not a person that can ever tell a joke, and the night that I met him, he shared many jokes, and as I hit him because I thought it was really funny, something really hurt. I'm like, ow, what is that? And he's just like, oh, I'm sorry, I have a fake leg. And I'm like, ah. And everybody started laughing, and so I thought he was joking. And so I went on to talk about how, yes, in fact, what do you call a guy that's in the water with no arms and no legs? Bob? You know, and all these jokes, I suddenly remembered them, and I was really funny. Well, believe it or not, he did ask me out again, and believe it or not, he actually was an amputee, and he had cancer up until that point. At 18 years old, he was diagnosed with desmoid tumors, a very rare form of benign tumors, but very aggressive. And so by the time he was 19 years old, he had had about 9 surgeries, and he had actually chosen to amputate his leg. I was absolutely just, I would say, utterly gobsmacked with this man because he was so positive. And I just kept thinking, what is it about this man that would make him keep going? Because there were a lot of obstacles to overcome. He learned how to golf on one leg. He learned how to downhill ski on one leg. He learned how to water ski on one leg. And so incredibly motivating. And so fast forward, we moved out to Wisconsin. He was never supposed to have children, but God blessed us with 3 amazing children. And so we just had so many miracles in our life. And so when the kids were 2, 4, and 6, Bob had gone to just a colonoscopy, and the doctor calls me and just said, you have to come and get your husband. And I'm like, why? And he said, well, he has colorectal cancer. And I'm like, no, he doesn't have colorectal cancer. That happens to other people. That doesn't happen to us. And of course he did. But they had given him a good prognosis. They said you have a good about 75% chance of beating this. And so we went through our traditional rounds. We just did only like chemotherapy. We did radiation and of course surgery. And so as we were, plugging through the world of cancer, we finished those first 6 months. It was definitely a challenge, but we were like, whew, that's good, and put it behind us. Well, we went to his first checkup after 3 months, and sure enough, he had had 8 tumors that metastasized to his liver. And they said, you guys, it's time to get your house in order. You have 18 months max, and you know what, you need to just, the writing's on the wall. Lauren, Sam, and Michaela were 2, 4, and 6 at this time. And so it was not what you ever believed can happen to you. And we lived the standard healthy American diet. Sometimes we ate out, sometimes we didn't, but we had fruits, vegetables, and what we believed to be healthy. And so now, when this new aspect of his cancer, we just said, all right, we're not going to leave any stone unturned. And so we chose to drain the college kids' accounts and just say, we are going to take this on and do it all. And so one aspect, I'm sure of those of you that are caregivers in this audience understand, is that it is very challenging to really feel useful as a caregiver. And so for me, what I found is, this is kind of when the internet was just coming to life. So what I did is really started delving into the world of nutrition. And things that just kept popping up repeatedly were, eating an organic diet, eating a plant-based diet, and juicing. And so just kept looking at this, and so we sent the kids off to my parents' house for 3 weeks. And sure enough, I literally turned the house upside down. I said, we're going to do this, hon. And we got rid of every chemical in the house. We got rid of if we could not pronounce it, it was not in the house. And we just, down to our hand soap, down to our laundry soap, down to even the ice cream. And the kids would be like, are we ever going to have Cocoa Puffs again? And I'm like, no. And they're like, what about ice cream? And she's like, no, you can have Rice Dream. And it was just like, they didn't know it hit them, but they were young enough to be resilient and just bounce back from it. And what was really neat about this is we just started noticing that we felt the best we had ever felt in our life. And so Bob would always say, how can it be, on paper, they're telling me I just have months to live. But he's like, I feel awesome. I feel great. And so we just kept pursuing it, and eventually we had moved back here to Minnesota at that time. And just to, fast forward through this story, they had given him 18 months to live, and 6.5 years we rode the roller coaster of cancer. We were given 6.5 years that we were never supposed to have been given. When on April 27th, 2005, Bob, with my children and myself and my family, we literally were praying and cheering Bob on as he went home to meet a Savior. It was truly the most awesome and poignant moment of our lives. And here we were just thinking, he did it. He showed us so much, and we were given 6.5 years that we were never to have been given. The kids were 9, 10, and 12. And so as we just went through this journey of grief, I just remember so vividly, well, actually before Bob died, I should back up a little, he was always writing. And I was just like, wow, after he died, I couldn't find any of the things he had written. I'm just like, where are they? And sure enough, about 3 weeks after, I turned around and I looked in his office, and here's this huge expandable folder of notes and letters and cards and just presents and just things that he had thought of, but he had left, like, what to do if I wanted to date again, what his thoughts were on it, what to do if the kids, well, what to do when they wanted to date, or what about like advice for the kids in drinking, or just really inspirational quotes or Bible verses or things like that. And so I would really start to draw through these. But when we started speaking about resilience and bringing it into this evening, I just remember there was just one evening, and it was just very poignant, very just etched in my mind. It was one evening with our children, and the enormity of the loss was really starting to settle in. There's definitely, as the shock of grief wears off and it starts sinking in what you're really in for. I was just tucking the kids into bed that night, and I was just like, I don't know how to do this. This is not what I bought on for. I just felt so overwhelmed, and as I was walking out of their bedroom, tucking them in that night, I said, you know what? I did not have a choice whether Bob lived or whether Bob died. But I do have a choice how I want to move through grief. I can go negatively or I can go positively, but either way I have to move through it. And so I just chose right then, I'm going through it positively. And so I just made this absolute promise to myself that in all things, there's good. You just got to look for it. And sometimes you got to get really creative in finding it. But we did. The four of us just found that journey, and we found the good in every day. And one thing that just a tool that we also found really useful was one of the things that Bob had actually left behind was just a simple letter. It was just on his letterhead, and it just says, never, ever, ever give up. And then just P.S., never. And it was just a really fun way that we just had it posted, or if we'd find it around the house, we would always just be looking at it. And that was just like our mantra, just let's not give up. We know that there's going to be good in this, and let's just keep looking for it. And so as we were just doing that journey, you know what? My journey through grief was anything but linear. I made plenty of mistakes, but it was uniquely my journey. And I had found the opportunity to give myself grace, to realize that I wasn't going to do this perfectly, but that it was uniquely my road to find the positives. And so as I started doing that, I started looking into different aspects of, I was really into health and fitness now, and so I started getting some different certifications, trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with my life, and how am I going to reinvent myself as the kids were getting older. And so now we'll start fast forwarding. I met a younger man and who had 5 children. I am now remarried, and it's been a crazy, wonderful journey. But in this journey of finding what I wanted to do, I was going to be opening a Stott Pilates studio. I had gone to this like 500-hour certification, and I always knew I wanted my own business again. But one of these was I was working at the YMCA and doing this Live Strong class with Christy. And that's where I met her. and then we get to go to her now.
Oh,
you're
right.
good.
I've
You're
got
good.
my mic.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Oh, we're so not done. Just kidding. You just save that. We're all good.
no, so Marie and I met teaching Livestrong, and when we were co-teaching this class, I started talking to her and listening. Actually, I should say at first I listened because she's a fantastic speaker and drew me in. But I was, before Livestrong, I was a wellness coach at the Y, and I had been motivated to start the Livestrong class process because my family and I found ourselves on a cancer journey, much like you just heard Marie talk about. I only need to rewind 5.5 years. It was January of 2012. My husband, Wes, was 36 years old and had some stomach aches. And they got worse at night. And it's kind of like, well, what'd you eat today? I mean, get over it and choose something better. I mean, literally. And then the stomach aches came back the next day and got worse again later in the evening. And so 10 o'clock on January 14th, I dropped him off at the ER. I was like, I'm going to go back because the kids are sleeping. Call me when you need to get picked up. I mean, I couldn't stay. At 2 o'clock that morning, he texted, are you awake? Let's talk. I was like, of course I'm awake. You're at the emergency room. So he's like, well, they took some scans. They saw some suspicious masses, and they're going to admit me to the hospital. They think it might be cancer. And it was 6 years before this that I had just lost my dad to brain cancer. And so being somewhat familiar with this cancer journey, I was like, you don't get diagnosed in an emergency department. Like there are procedures. Let's just take this slow. And Wes, by the way, was like, by the way, I'm on morphine. I have no more pain. Don't lose any sleep over this. So I went to sleep, woke up, got the kids to school. We have 3 daughters. Got the kids to school, went up to the emergency department, met him, and so began our first weekend of a whole introduction to a whole host of words that when you're 36 and 38 years old, you think, what? Wait, huh? Slow down. Us? Right? And what they found in my husband, Wes, was tumors that started in his colon and had already metastasized into his liver and into his lungs, and it was stage 4 colon cancer. And when pressed, I have to stress that it was very much, we had to press upon our doctors and the team, what does this really look like? Like, what does this look like? And they said, it's 2 to 4 months, maybe 6. And so Wes was like, well, sweet, I'm going to be the anomaly because that is not a timeline I'm ready to live. And we followed that. We had been living a standard American diet. We were healthy. We had 3 young children. And like you heard Marie say, this happens to other people, not us. I had the great fortune of graduating from Gustavus Adolphus College with 2 degrees. One was health education and the other was health science, exercise science. And lived a life that was supported by 2 amazing parents and an older brother that beat me up just to keep me, level-headed. Growing up and having a passion for health guided me definitely as a caregiver to seek out ways to help Wes's health. I knew nothing about colon cancer, and I didn't want to. So I didn't do any of that silly research that the internet can expose you to about all of the bad, awful, terrible things that could happen. We just focused on Wes's health because there are doctors and there are professionals, and those people we need on our team. But what we did at home was choose constantly every opportunity we could to support Wes's health. and and thrive in the unknown, because we had this, I guess, this practice of just being in the present moment and knowing that we had 4 months, maybe 6 months, in which to just celebrate every day. So we didn't get too worked up, quite honestly, about the impending 2, 4 months, 6, diagnosis. We just got busy recruiting people onto our team. And so we had oncologists and we had specialists, and we also, in saying yes to everything, we found different, like, holistic doctors and nutritionalists, and figured, well, if he's going to go through all of this chemo, what can we do to help him feel better in the meantime? And so we learned quickly, and thank goodness, this is 10 years later, and I have a cell phone that's very smart. And so when I'm going through the grocery store and I'm Googling all these ingredients that I can't pronounce, I'm finding out, oh, these are preservatives, and we don't want that in his body that is literally like littered with tumors, right? And so we started just choosing plant-based diets, and we got out the juicer that we got for our wedding anniversary in our wedding in 1997, and dusted it off, and started juicing. And I said to Wes one day when we were in the clinic, I said, "You have cancer, like, all over your body. Like, do you just hate it? Because you have cancer in there." And I asked this knowing what his answer was going to be, and he was like, "No, it's a part of me." And we sat there and had this really memorable conversation while we waited for the elevator about how you have to choose to love this, okay? This is not the problem that we think it is. There's opportunity here. We have to find this ability to not hate, but to love, because this is our experience now. This isn't what we imagined. Now Wes and I and our family is walking this path that this isn't exactly what we would have liked to sign up for, but guess what? Are we going to spend our time hating this and hating going to Rochester and begrudging going in for these 8-hour days of chemotherapy? Or are we going to make the best of it because it's 8 hours that we get to spend together? And it's a 2-hour drive to Rochester that we otherwise probably would have said, we don't have time for 2 hours for ourselves. And so what ended up happening is we ended up finding a lot of time together that we celebrated. And we, in turning our house upside down and inside out, and my kids literally said, "Will we ever eat cheese nips again?" So in doing all of that, Wes would spend an 8-hour day in the chemotherapy chair, and he would come home, and I would make him a juice, and he would head off to work and say, "I have never felt better." And so he juiced, and then we juiced, and we ate nutritionally. We changed our diet, but everybody, my 3 children, myself included, and my husband, we all felt better. And 6 months turned into 6 months and a day, and we celebrated. And it turned into 7 months, and it turned into a year. And 3.5 years later, through a lot of chemo, some unfortunate circumstances and some different surgeries, but some amazing times where he, with a colostomy bag, water skied, and we traveled internationally when nobody thought we would or should or could. We lived an amazing 3.5 years, and my husband died at the age of 40, and we lived on a lot of borrowed time. But he was home, and we surrounded him, and my children were 9 and 11 and 13, 9 and 10 and 12, the same ages as Marie's children. Bob was 40, and Wes was 40. They both died of colon cancer, and Marie and I didn't know each other through the thick of our journeys. I certainly, unfortunately, didn't know Marie through hers. She came in on the last 6 months of mine and Wes's journey. And all of these similarities started to stack up as we taught this Live Strong class together. And we just knew that there was something pretty special about our friendship. We shared a very common language as caregivers, and many times kind of just sat there and we were like, what is this about? When my husband, the day before he died, he informed us it was time for him to go. And it was the first time we had talked about him dying. And 17 hours later, he took his last breath. But before doing that, one of the things that he said when he talked to me and our girls is he said, "This is so much bigger than us." And that is something that we'll get to at the end of, as Marie and I continue on, but that is something that plays into, like Bob's piece that talks about never, ever, ever give up. Yes, never. We play out our resilience in some of those words that they shared with us. This being so much bigger than us is the next part of our story. And one of the things that happened while we taught Live Strong classes together is I was in the thick of juicing, right? I'm juicing for my husband, I'm juicing for myself, I'm juicing for my kids. I'm juicing for anybody that will entertain a juice. I'm juicing for nurses. They're like, oh, here she comes again with the green juice. I mean, we moved into the hospital room in Rochester, and I loaded the refrigerator. They brought a refrigerator in for me so I could load it up with produce and juice. Live Strong, I'd bring my juicer, and I'd bring produce, and I would juice for our cancer survivors.
And this is a perfect place for me to interject. Because now remember, I'm opening a Pilates studio at this point, but Christy's doing all these little juicing presentations.
Right. And so I literally am, taking all sorts of produce. What's fun about this is bringing carrots and parsley and spinach and apples in the whole form and turning them into juice and having people sample it and just go bananas over how great it tastes, right? And so I'm like, you know what? We've been talking about this. Wes and I, we have to open a juice bar. We just have to. It's time. It would be so much easier if this existed for us. And so we're going to open a juice bar. I'm going to open a juice bar.
And so I'm opening a Pilates studio, and it was interesting because here we had this class, and in the beginning of the class, I would run them, through just these great exercises where I'm sure they all felt so much better, and then we get to the juicing presentation, and they were just, oh Christy, and I'd be like, hey, you opening a studio over here, and so finally she announces it one day. She's like, I just want you guys to know it's official. I'm gonna open up a juice bar, and I'm like, well, I want you guys to know one thing. It's official. I'm opening up a Pilates studio. And they're like, Christy, tell us about the juice bar.
Great, Marie.
Okay, well, and so I'm watching this going, all right, I know this stuff works. I know what it did for us. I know what it did for our family, and I know how much work it is. We just had to let it go. It was being an only parent, it just wasn't a lifestyle that we were able to continue, and I missed it. And I could just see the enthusiasm that everybody was reaching out for, especially those that were in impaired health. And so I was just kind of like, tell me about this juice bar.
To which, quite honestly, our togetherness just undeniably was divined. Our journeys independently led us to this opportunity, but we didn't know that, right? And one of the things that was so similar about our language is some of these things that we really hope that you take with you tonight. And one of them was, like, we said yes to everything. We said yes to whatever opportunity there was to live a full life. And that's what got me into this, we're going to open a juice bar, is I was saying yes, and I was not prepared to say yes, but I knew that there was something that we had to do in regards to juice and nutrition. When we were walking this journey of disease and feeling good with nutrition being simple, it just seemed like more people needed to know this. More people needed to be exposed to this. So I just kept saying yes to it. And fortunately for Marie, when I asked her to be my business partner, she did the same thing. She said yes.
Yeah, and it happened very organically. It was over a text, and so, it was really okay, and we can laugh at it now, and we can look at this and just say, how do we do this? But it truly is, there's so much passion and so much purpose in what we do, knowing what it did for our lives and wanting to bring that to others. So it was a very easy yes, but I can tell you, everyone not everyone, the majority of people that we would discuss it with, they're like, you guys, it'll never work. It'll never work in Mankato. Mankato's a $5 town. There's no way you can do it. You're crazy. Don't do it. And we're just like, nope. We've seen the way people are reacting to this, and so we forged ahead, and we decided in March that we were going to do this, and we opened our doors January 6th of 2016. And so it started it birthed a great business relationship, but just an awesome friendship. We've known each other about 3 years now, and I can just say, as sure as I'm standing on this stage, I adore Christy more today than I did 3 years ago. And that was just another thing that people really just said, no, you probably don't want to do that. You never go into business with friends. And so there were just way
We
too
joked.
many
We're like, well, we're not
confluences.
friends. We just met.
We're like, we don't know if we like each other. It's all good. But we have had, it's been an awesome journey, and there have been amazing treasures along the way. And one of I think our favorite things to do in our store is we talk to the cashiers. We call them day makers. And what our goal is for every person that walks in, just to feel a little bit better when they leave. And we've created a space for your journey, whatever that journey is. We want to hear your stories. It is, we all have one, and we want to make sure that people feel that safe place of coming in and understanding we're more than just a juice shop. We're more than just a healthy eatery. We know this works. We know that we all feel better when we're eating healthy and nutritiously. So.
Yeah, so with WYSIWYG, for those of you that don't know, we make juice through a cold press juice machine. It uses 9 tons of pressure to extract all the nutrients from the liquid nutrients from the fresh produce, the fresh vegetables and fruits. We called it WYSIWYG because the acronym stands for what you see is what you get. And we just really felt that our journeys kind of peeled back the layers of kind of the standard American diet that has a lot of hidden things in it and things and words that you can't pronounce. Thank you. And we wanted to make it simple again. You take a carrot and a sweet potato and lemon and apple and spinach, and you grind them up and you press them together, and you have this amazing juice. We found that was a great way to get some liquid nutrition into your body, whether it's of perfect health or on some sort of path of disease. And in addition to,
Wish I could finish those.
and I know, I'm like, where are you? In addition to the juice that we do smoothies, and we do salads, and we have a lot of fun, different things that we offer down there. And we're down on South Front Street, across from Polly-Ice Pizza. We always knew that this location would be our hardest location. But we also envision WYSIWYG being this started here in Mankato, and we have great hopes and dreams for where it goes.
And so drawing the entire talk back to resiliency and what does that look like? We thought long and hard about, okay, what can we leave with you today to just say, what does resiliency look like? And so we came up with a list.
We did. This was important.
All right. So the first one, again, just to repeat it, was choosing. Every day you have a choice in all things. You have a choice to choose the positive, and you have a choice to always find good. And so throughout our stories, we chose the positive. We chose to just find the good. And I don't want any of you to walk away tonight thinking our journeys were easy or that, oh, it was so much fun. You know, there's some days that are just really hard. And it's okay. That's just being authentic. It is hard. It will always be a challenge. But we can always find the good in that challenge, knowing that there is strength that comes from that.
I oftentimes would talk about our second point to my children, and I brought this up in our Live Strong class too. But oftentimes as a mom, you hear your kids say, or as an adult, you hear your kids say, Mom, we have a problem. And I was in the thick of raising young children, and I heard that a lot. Mom, we have a problem. And then I found myself in life with my husband having cancer, like, this is a problem. Would I choose to respond to that statement is, we don't have a problem, we have an opportunity. And so
sometimes it's really annoying.
I'm just saying.
Not every day is it so much fun. Okay, go on.
No, because it still lives out today, as you can imagine. But I celebrated with my Live Strong class this one opportunity, this one time,
Just once.
where my children actually said to me, hey, Mom, we have an opportunity. This was right after I heard a very loud crash in the kitchen. But it is. It's another takeaway point that is almost inherent in the way Marie and I function. And it is, I think, a huge testimony to resilience, is when you see things not as a problem, but rather as an opportunity. And it doesn't take a whole lot of creativity to get there. It just takes practice. But I really would lovingly challenge you to, next time you find yourself even saying, oh, God, this is a problem, is trying to reframe that and see what the opportunity is. Because we're here to tell you, losing your husband when he's 40 years old, that's a big problem. It was an enormous problem. It's become a huge opportunity. And daily, when I walk in the doors of WYSIWYG, or when I send my kids off to school, I am daily greeted with the opportunity that I have of making the best out of what could have been a huge problem. It's not to say, again, it's not to say that it's easy, but what we've found as we talk through this is it's more the practice. And so when I lovingly encourage you to do this, it's in the little things. When you say, oh, it's a little problem, see it as an opportunity. Because we believe it sets you up for success when the big problems present themselves. Okay, that's our hope.
The other area that we really defined is, I'm sure there are so many of you in here that have suffered great loss. And as you know, for example, when we were discussing this and what we wanted to say, I said, you know, I think it's interesting because now it's been 12 and a half years since Bob died. I feel very healed, very whole. There isn't a moment that goes by or a day that I don't miss him, but I feel very healthy. And however, it doesn't mean that, you know, so here I am like 12 and a half years out, and Christy's only 2.5 years. If I was you, I'd be kind of going, well, come on, that's a long time ago. Why are you still talking about it? And what's so interesting is here's Christy in this grief that's so fresh. But I think what I really want to point out is the quiet resiliency of just moving through the dreams that you grieve, the moments that you you didn't get. You know, with every wonderful, exciting moment with our children, it's always, you know, laced with just a certain piercing of your heart. And so it's just that quiet resiliency to understand that, hey, I'm going to feel this, I'm going to honor it, but I'm not going to get stuck there. That's a choice. I don't need to be stuck there.
The next point of resiliency that we hope you take away from is we feel that resiliency is found in saying yes. Am I right? Is that next?
Yes.
Sweet. She said yes. Resiliency is found in saying yes. What that looks like is, I mean, it's easily identified in saying yes to, like I said, we said yes to different treatments. We made ourselves vulnerable through Wes's cancer journey by saying yes sometimes when everybody else was like, wait a minute, wait. We said yes to things and experiences to add to and enhance our life. We said yes to starting a partnership while I was like on my knees in grief, and in a grief that I didn't even know how much worse it could get. We said yes. And I think that what's really fascinating, I'm going to let you in on something, but there's one man.
I have no idea where you're going.
I know. I'm throwing a curveball here, but
Where are we going?
Living courageously and saying yes when it doesn't feel safe is opening up your heart again and finding love. And you heard that in Marie's story. There's one man amongst us. And it's somebody that walked across while I was sampling juice. And I kind of have been saying yes to this new relationship. And James is here. Some of you may have even sampled juice from him tonight. But he is a new person in my life that I've said yes, that I'm saying yes, I'm willing to try a relationship again. And so what we hope you take from this is there are always, there are yes and no, right? And resiliency sometimes is, I don't want to say yes to this, I'm gonna. That's when I think the grit shows up. When you feel like, I do not want to say yes to this, but you do.
The next area I really feel strongly about is resiliency lies in having faith. For me, I always had faith in my life, but I would just say it was a very convenient faith. I just kind of called on God when it was my benefit to do so. And so I have just, this literally has brought me to my knees, and now my faith is just the very core of who I am. And for me, I just, you know, if someone would have told me I'd be that person going, I just love Jesus, I would be like, okay, new. However, what's so great about it is I am everything I never wanted to be, and I've never had more peace in my life. And so faith is just an anchor. And so we just really can't stress that enough.
Mm-hmm. What's left?
Okay.
My favorite one. Resiliency, as we talked about what we wanted to hopefully share with you guys, is resiliency lies in making love, of making the word love.
I gotta go now. Went on a whole new road, guys. Whole new road.
It lies in, I know, Jenny's like, you guys went there. No. Resiliency is in taking the word love and making it a verb. Okay? And what that means is I no longer have the embodiment of West to love. But I get to live love in every customer that comes in to Wizuig, in every interaction I have with everybody. I go to the gas station, I go in and pay, and I am loving that moment, okay? Because that may be the last moment I have. And I want that moment to be something that experiences the best of humanity. I do. I really seriously do.
She seriously does. She's not just making this up, kids.
No.
It's pretty great.
So it is taking the word love and it is finding out how to infiltrate it into your life. And how to love cancer when it exists in your husband's body or your own. Or how to love this problem because it actually might be the best opportunity that you never saw coming. So taking love and making it into a verb that you live is where we think resiliency lies, where we think the grit of being resilient lies.
And then finally, we really are wrapping it up.
We are.
And so
It's a good thing there's not a clock up here. We don't
I know, because we have no idea. Okay, but finally, obviously through adversity, we've found purpose and we have found passion, and many times people have asked, "Wow, it just sounds like everything's so good, and don't you want them back?" And the truth is that if someone said to me today, "Okay, you can have him back," the truth is I wouldn't wish him back for a moment. I can miss Bob for every moment or all of it, but the truth is that I'm who I am now. I'm ready to take that, just to continue moving on through life, and just keep finding the positives in everything. At 40 years old, I learned what was truly important in life. Faith, your family, your friends. I could have just blindly gone through life, just kind of achieving, succeeding. And I can tell you when Bob died, he never said, if only I'd worked more. That was never it. And so what I just want to leave you with was just one other thing that, just this little handwritten note that he had left us, and he just said, and this was actually to the kids and to me, but it was, no matter how bad things might seem today, God and time are beautiful healers. Get through this day, and tomorrow will be brighter. Eventually, you might look back and be amazed that the terrible event wasn't so bad after all. And you know what? The terrible event wasn't so bad after all.
So thank you for listening to our story and letting us share the similarities that brought us together. We hope that you found this helpful, and we look forward to seeing you down in WYSIWYG.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, aren't they beautiful? Isn't that amazing? And you are just speaking my language. Food is medicine. Everybody, food is medicine. I love how they said they never felt better in the midst of those cancer journeys, and talked about choosing how you move forward. Oh boy, that's really great. Thank you. So the next thing we're going to do is bring up two psychologists, Dr. Darcy Jacobs and Kim Halla. Darcy and I were in a book club together. Do you know what it's like to have a psychologist in your book club? One time I said, I just don't like that character at all. And Darcy said, I see, Kathy. Tell me how you feel about that. I'm teasing. She's super smart and wonderful, and I'm sure they're going to teach us lots. They are both Minnesota natives, and they're going to teach us about resiliency and how to have courage and how to resolve our difficulties with resilience. Welcome, Drs. Darcy Jacobs and Kim Halla.
We got a tough act to follow.
Yeah. We're mostly here to say they got it right.
They got it right, and so they kind of said it all.
We're
I don't even know
done.
if we need to. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Do you want to slide up?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Not the doggy. No.
Okay. Just kidding. We're staying on this slide.
I think we need to go, maybe we don't have that one.
I bet we don't have that other one.
I think we don't have that one. Nope, we don't have that one. All right, so we're going to bring a little bit of the science to all of this, but we're going to make science fun. Don't worry about it. So first of all, one of the questions that Cecily had posed to us when she asked us to do this talk was, what is resilience? And I love the whole concept of resilience because it is positive. And positive psychology is, for me, my calling, why I got into this field. So the dictionary definition of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, a toughness, and the ability of a substance to spring back. So because we wanted to be interactive and try to follow up from this wonderful talk, we came up with.
Yeah, we had Cecily bring these beautiful little bracelets for all of you, and she informed us that green is the color of resilience, which is pretty cool. But what we wanted to have you do these is kind of like to help you remember what resilience is all about, because if you do notice these bracelets, because they're made of rubber, you can stretch them in all directions and they return to their shape, and so they bounce back well. And that's kind of one of the main concepts of resilience, is the ability to recover from adversity. And so this is meant to be a reminder for all of you of that.
So, yeah, bouncing back. Well, when we think about what is the reason that resilience is so important? How did we get to this point in wanting to talk about this as a concept, something that people can grab onto and use in their lives? If you think about some of the research, some of the history, now we need Mr. Doggy here. Okay, happy dog. We're going to look at happy dog. Going back to some of the research in the 60s, I won't bore you with too much of this, but there was a researcher named Martin Seligman, and he was initially looking into it was depression research.
Mm-hmm.
It was really started out with depression research because not much was known at that point in time. And one of his seminal research projects that he had done was taking dogs, not this little guy here, but two groups of dogs, and one group was put in a box and they were given little shocks to their paws, but they had the ability to control it. They could touch a panel with their nose and they could stop the shock. So they had control over how much suffering they experienced. The other group of dogs did not have control over it. They had to just experience the shock, which I think was only like 5 seconds of
Yeah,
shock.
it wasn't
not
bad,
like,
but still.
you're thinking,
I mean,
God, psychologists, you guys are downers. Let's go back to the juice thing here. Ugh, I'm talking about dogs. Stay with me. We're going to walk through the forest here. We'll get to the light. So what they then found was that basically they then put the dogs into a different type of box, a box where there's two sides. One side they were put into was where the shock was administered, but there was a little low wall in between. And the dogs could potentially jump over the wall and get away from the shock. So virtually all the dogs that had the power to turn the shock off with their little panel learned. They figured out how to jump over and get away from the suffering. About 2/3 of the dogs that didn't have any control just kind of laid down and they gave up. It was a term that Seligman later called learned helplessness. And it produced a lot of the theories about depression and how depression can be a learned is the
Yeah.
right word for it.
But a learned mood state.
Mood state, yeah.
Yeah, approach to problems.
But there was 1/3 of those dogs that didn't give up. 1/3 of the dogs who didn't have control still kept persisting, trying to figure out how they could get away from the suffering. And eventually Seligman was really more curious about those dogs. And so his research throughout the decades turned into the movement of positive psychology. And he was able to coin the term learned optimism, which is kind of what brings us here to resilience. He saw that these dogs were resilient. What was it that made them continue to try to make their circumstances better, to get away from the suffering? So that's Seligman. I think we have another. Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead to the next one.
Okay.
No. Oh, you want to go? Actually, I need the next. Yeah, I need the next slide. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. So the next little bit of research that brings us back to resilience was a researcher named Carol Dweck, And she researched mindsets, how people approached concepts that typically to that point had been considered fairly static, fairly stable. So if you look up here on this slide, there's 4 statements. And read through those. And what I want you to do is think about if there's any of those that really seem to resonate with you. Are there any that you think, yeah, I think I agree with that? And maybe there's a couple of them that resonate. You just want to take a moment and read through it. Sure. The first one is your intelligence is something very basic about you that you don't change very much. The second one is you can learn new things, but you can't really change how intelligent you are. The third is no matter how much intelligence you have, you can always change it quite a bit. And the fourth is you can always substantially change how intelligent you are. So kind of think about if one or a couple of those resonate with you. And so this is one of the, I think it was part of one of Carol Dweck's experiments.
Yeah, one of her social psychology
That she would,
experiments.
that she would present to people. And eventually, the long and short of it is what she found was that if you were a person who tends to agree with the first 2 statements, you have what she coined a fixed mindset. You tended to believe that things, traits, characteristics such as intelligence were static, fixed. They didn't really change over time. If you resonate, the last 2 statements resonated more with you, you were a person who had more of a growth mindset, that you believed that even something such as intelligence could be influenced by your effort, by what you put into a situation. And how Carol Dweck added to the field of resilience is people with a growth mindset tend to have this resilience. People with a fixed mindset tend to be more likely to have mental illness and suffer from depression, anxiety, and so forth. So I think the whole takeaway from just this little bit of research that's been presented is that really it's exciting that science has backed up that we can change how we approach things, how we feel. We can affect our mental health.
It can affect our mental health. And the interesting thing about it is that simply having the belief that you can change your outcomes in life and that you can change your viewpoint is enough to make that possible. So,
Definitely.
yeah. So then another just kind of like illustration of resilience is I was going to talk to you guys about the kintsukuroi. Is anybody familiar with this at all? Ever heard of it? It's really cool. It's a Japanese art of broken pottery. And so basically what it is it's a centuries-old art in which Japanese artists take broken pottery and they repair it with gold or silver lacquer. And the idea being that the vessel, or usually it's bowls, but the vessel has a new life, it's stronger, it's more beautiful, that because it's been sort of reborn out of the tragedy of it breaking, it's a better thing. And so a lot of people in Japanese culture use this as sort of a model of resilience. That it's not so much about whether the bowl is unbreakable at first, whether it goes into the experience of being knocked off a table or whatever happened to it. It's not about the initial unbreakability of it. It's about the ability for it to become something better because it's been broken. And so that's something that we wanted you to think about, when you're thinking about resilience in your own life.
So yeah, in a nutshell, resilience isn't that nothing bad has ever happened to me or that I didn't suffer for it. It's how do you spring back? How do you find the gold that puts your pieces back together? That's how I see resilience.
Yeah, so that's kind of what our
angle is
theme
here.
is.
Yeah. All right. So why some people have it.
Were you going to talk about this book too? Or?
Should we? I think that's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, we can leave it up though.
Okay. So what we're going to kind of talk about next is kind of how people, like what leads to resilience. And like we said earlier, with Christy and Marie, what they said is pretty much on the dot, but we're going to cover it in a little bit more detail because we're psychologists and that's what we do. So one of the things we wanted you guys to do is you should have a little questionnaire with you. It looks kind of like this. It's a brief resilience scale. And I promise you this is not just a Cosmo questionnaire. This is an actual, validated questionnaire on resilience. And what we'd like you to do is rate those questions about yourself. And to score it, it's very easy. You just add it up and divide it by 6. So it's just an average of what your answers were. And then we'll help you interpret it. How's everybody doing? Getting those rusty math skills out?
Or get out the smartphone with a calculator. if you're not
Yeah.
going to. No, there won't be any judging.
No, we don't judge,
No,
don't worry.
judge.
What's that? Divide the total by 6 so that it gives you an average score. Yeah. And so one of the things too, just to bring your attention to it, as you're looking at this questionnaire, one of the things we wanted you guys to notice is that this is considered to be the best available measure of resilience. And all of the questions are related to how people recover from difficult times or adversity rather than what people have going into adversity. And so again, it's really that main theme that resilience is a lot more about how we recover. And we just want to try to drive that home because, you know, I think there are a lot of people who fear adversity because they're afraid they won't be strong enough to deal with it. And being resilient or having that kind of strength really isn't about whether or not you have that ability going in, it's what you take from it. And that's what this questionnaire kind of points out too. So, are you guys ready for the scoring? Okay. So the way this is scored, it's decimals because it's an average, but people who have scores of 4.31 or above are considered to have high resilience. People who have scores of 3 to 4.3 are considered to have normal resilience. And 1 to 2.99 is considered low resilience. And so that is just to give you guys an idea of kind of where you stand now and what kind of things, you know, you can maybe take to work on.
And if you're low resilience, it's okay because we
it
have a
can be
growth mindset.
built.
Yes, and it can be built. And yeah, how do we get there? So yeah, the point is not that resilience is something you either have or you don't. It's not a static trait. It's something that can be learned. It can be nurtured. And it doesn't have to wait for these big, huge, awful events to happen in our lives. It can be something that we cultivate day by day, week by week, throughout our everyday life.
Yeah, kind of like Christy mentioned, it's, you know, if you look at everyday problems as opportunities to learn something or grow a little bit, that really does help promote resilience.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, some of the things that also help point to people having resilience is not whether or not you have the negative events happen in your life, it's how you handle it. And optimism is another big factor. So as you know, we stated earlier, having an optimistic mindset, being able to see opportunities in everything is very important to building up that resilience and why some people seem to come by it a little more easily. Are we gonna go on to that? Yeah.
Okay. So some of the factors or things that we found, you know, that the research has said are related to resilience are things like that optimism, that making sure that you're always looking for that chance to say yes, always looking for a chance to figure out what you can kind of control about a situation, even if you can't control the things that matter most. It's kind of figuring out what you can do to turn that situation into an opportunity. Setting small goals. And so kind of having a resolution to make sure that you are always looking forward is very important for fostering resilience. Other things that matter a lot are self-care. A lot of times when people are going through difficult times, people have a tendency to stop tending to their health and, you know, to routine and to the things that keep people healthy in general. And really when things are tough in life is when you need that the most. Because if you think about it, that's sort of like your gas tank that's keeping you going. And without that, it's very difficult to be strong. Social support. We know that unequivocally, people who seek social support and who, you know, make use of their friends and family to help them through tough times tend to do better. It's very important to have. And then, of course, learning from your past. And so even if you've had just small adversities in your past, learning from those things instead of treating them as shameful or as
Well,
something.
that's over and done with. I don't need to think
Yeah.
about that.
There's always a
Reflection
lesson
is
to be
always
learned.
good.
And so, yep,
Definitely.
taking those lessons and learning from them is important.
Yeah. So another factor that's kind of been a buzzword, I think, in popular culture lately, but is there because of the science, and it is closely related to resilience, is the term grit. And Marie and Christy had used that term a couple of times. And grit is the idea that you have perseverance, that you kind of put resilience into action, that you take it and you continue to further yourself. So a couple of factors that go into growing grit include practice, and not just practice like, oh, I run and I'm just going to go out for a run every day. If I'm a really gritty person, I may set some small goals for myself. I may keep track of, whatever runners keep track of.
That's not us, clearly.
That's not us. We're not runners. See how deep I get into my down dog? I don't know. Yeah, I'm more yoga. Yeah, so practice, but having goals, having a purpose, a drive to achieve certain small goals. Purpose to what I'm doing. Is there meaning? And this is something else that Marie and Christy noted, was that there was purpose to what they were doing. I think WYSIWYG is just a beautiful example of love, just coming into the form of a business. And if you've ever been down there, you walk in the door and you feel love, you feel social support. It's a beautiful thing. So having purpose to what we're doing is so important. And then the last thing is hope. If you have hope that things can get better, that if I continue to try to figure out how to jump over that wall to get away from the shock, I'm going to do it. And so continuing to have hope, continuing to look at every day as an opportunity to be able to keep trying, to keep going, and figuring it all out.
So I think that mostly sums up what we were going to say. There's a copy of this in your handouts as well. It's just kind of a summary of all of the things that people can do to try to develop resilience. And so we were hoping it would be a nice reminder for you guys. We also included this fun little journal prompt page as kind of a way for you guys to think about how you can find resilience in your own life, whether that's in things that you have already had to face, large and small, or things that you may be having to face now or in the future. We're hoping that it is some prompts that will help you kind of frame the way you think about that in a way that might help breed resilience instead of make it more difficult for you to get through. So thank you very much for your time.
Ooh, thanks so much. We get the doctors up here. You can stay up here. We're going to bring Marie and Christy up here too, and there's a chance to ask them some questions. So there's chairs. I am holding a microphone. So, boy, there's just such good content here, and this is a great opportunity as you think about what you're fighting or dealing with, resilience in your life. You got the experts here. I'm going to start with, I have the microphone. I'm going to start with a question. And I'm sure it's maybe different for each of you, but I have listened to you and I think, yeah, on the morning you wake up and you feel like you haven't even slept and the sadness is overwhelming and you got to face another day and you have patients that tell you this. Like, what strategies, what do you do? How do you get that first foot in front of the other? What can you offer to someone who maybe is feeling that right now or knows tomorrow morning is going to feel that way? Yeah, what words of wisdom would you give? Let's start.
All right, I'm going to be honest here and tell you that was 4 days ago for me. And you never know when that day is going to come again. But one of the initial thoughts that I had, Kathy, was you let it happen. Because I want to be real in my life. And when it overcomes you, sometimes you have to let it overcome you. And then the second thing is, and this stems back from what you guys were talking about with practice. I grew up with two parents that told me constantly, I have a choice. They encouraged me to live this, and it's become my practice. And so in my choice, in that moment 4 days ago, it was, I'm going to choose to be thankful for my breath right now, because that really is all the gratitude I can muster up. But I have a choice. And so I laid there with my breath and tried to give thanks. And that choice led me to another choice. And so maybe there's hope in that, you know, that this choice will be a seed that gets me to another choice. And so I can, you know, go beyond my breath, and I can hone in on listening to my environment. And hey, listen, my kids are laughing, you know. I can be grateful for that. There's some peripheral noise that's good. And so then I gave thanks for that. And I slowly crawled out of that moment and found myself being able to appreciate something that was, it took me away from my own despair in that and my own sadness, and it was one simple choice after another. And so I think it leads to what we spoke of. It's that practice, but it doesn't have to be the big things. You know, it's the little things sometimes is what I think I thought of when you asked that question.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to add?
I would just parrot that, because I think it's, you know, psychologists have days where we don't want to get out of bed either.
It is.
It's true. But it's the small thing that you're going to do next. So yeah, maybe it's taking a breath. Maybe it's not thinking about what's going to happen at 4 o'clock today because it's 6 a.m. in the morning. It's just, what do I need to do next? Just the one next thing.
It's very true.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have much really to add to that other than just I know that there were just so many days where I would just lay there going, I don't even know how I can put one foot on the floor today, but I just got to do it. And I would just force myself and just put that one foot on the floor, and I would never bite off the whole day. I'm just like, all I'm going to do is just get 2 feet on the floor then. I'm going to get to the shower. And I just never looked at the whole day. And sure enough, as the day went on and you keep finding the good, you make it through.
That's great.
Much of the same. It really is about breaking it into small pieces. You know, sometimes what I try to do is just kind of ask myself, what's the best thing that's going to happen in the next 30 minutes? And then look forward to that. And then once that happens, and it's, okay, so what's the best thing that's going to happen in the next 30 minutes after that? And just kind of take it piece by piece until you don't have to do that anymore, until the day starts to come together for you.
That's good. The only other
that's
thing
great.
I think of too is like, how about fake it till you make it? You know, we've all heard that. And, you know, not to be inauthentic in all of this, but sometimes you have to detach and just, right?
Yeah, this is great. This is great. Okay, now I got my question answered. And who else has a question? Cecily's out there.
I want to know where to get a copy of the picture of that little curly-haired girl with the mask and the cape and the big boxing glove that you had up there.
Who else has a question? Oh, give everybody a round of applause. That's awesome. Just thought this was the best expo ever, for those of you who didn't hear it. She wondered if Marie ever opened a Pilates studio.
I have not opened it. I have certainly kept my license, and I'm just too in love with this. And so, but I certainly still do it at home, and never say never. I want to be that yes person.
Back here.
Actually have. We're like, well, if Tim Wells wouldn't get reelected, we could always move it up there. So. Not that I wish I, no.
Anyone else with a question?
Is there any books that you guys could recommend for grief?
Any books that they would recommend for grief?
Yes, but I can't think of the titles right now. Do you have any?
I have, well, one of them that's coming to mind right now is Second Firsts, and that is written by a young widow. Can't think of the name of the other one. Good Grief. The other one
I
is
tell
called
you
Good
what.
Grief. It's got a Christian basis to it, but it's lovely and to the point and quick reading.
We could add any recommendations to our website and on our Facebook page, so watch for it there. Do you mind? I'm sorry.
I'm just saying that if you actually are looking for some sort of literature or books to read about grief or something, oftentimes hospice programs, and there's more than one in areas, will have free lending libraries, and you can go in there and find all kinds of things that might be specifically something that you need.
I thought of another one, and I don't know the name of the author, but the title is How to Bury a Goldfish and like other circumstances around death. So.
Is anyone else? All right, well, thank you. Oh, did you have one? I'm sorry. Oh, I missed it, yeah. Thanks for everyone for coming. Again, this is just building a strong community. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And let's go out there as women and change the world and be resilient. Good night, everyone.
Before you go, and I know you've been sitting for quite a while, I want to thank you very much for coming. There is an evaluation that we included in the pack of papers on your table. If you wouldn't mind just taking a couple moments, you can leave it on the table when you've completed it. Otherwise, I will be sending an electronic copy to everyone that has an email address in the morning. Thank you.